Hey everyone, I'm Dan from JazzComposersPresent.com, an online space where composers, musicians, and listeners come together to celebrate the music we love. I'm joined today by Jim McNeely, pianist, composer, arranger, and composer in residence with the Frankfurt Radio HR Big Band and the Vanguard Jazz Orchestra. Jim is here to show us some scales he thought he invented and then realized, oops, he didn't.
Thanks, Dan. This was inspired years ago. I had a composition professor at the University of Illinois. His name was Herbert Brun. And one day he was given a talk about his life and career. And he said, when I was 12 years old, I invented the 12-tone system of composition. But then I found out that Schoenberg had already done that. So at the time, I remember being kind of struck by how unusual that was. But since then, I found this to be a familiar phenomenon in my own development. The discovery of an exciting new musical idea. You think it's yours, you think you've invented it, only to find out, to your great chagrin, that someone else had gotten there before me. I've got a couple examples I thought I'd share with you. Number one is my augmented scale. One day around 1970, I was walking around the campus of the University of Illinois when I had this epiphany. I thought the whole tone scale can be broken down into two augmented triads, like in example one there, the right side. What if we took the second triad and raised it a half step? Wow, a series of augmented triads in minor seconds. So that's what you get in the second example. Brilliant. So I ran to the music building and commandeered a practice room and started to write out the possibilities. And if you arrange the notes in the form 1, 3, 5, 6, 2, 4, you get this crunchy chord full of major sevenths, like in example 3. And so I played around with the scale and figured out you could apply it to a lot of different situations. So first of all, maybe we can hear just the original scale. So that's the whole tone scale, of course. And now when you raise the 2, 4, and 6 a half step, you get this. Okay, and then the master chord, what I thought was the master chord, sounds something like this. So there's a lot of nice major sevenths in that whole thing. It's a nice pile of dissonance in a way. So I played around with the scale and figured out that you could apply it to different jazz chords, like the major 7 sharp 5 chord. And here in example 4, we've got the major 7 sharp 5 chord, C major 7 sharp 5, and the C double augmented scale, C augmented scale as I was calling it, and also the augmented scale based on the major 7th, the one starting on B. So we can hear these examples now. So there's a lot of great tension in there, larger intervals, you know, and so I really fell in love with this sound and started to really write some tunes that I thought were very hip based on this material. So, of course, a couple of years later, Chick Corea's recording Sundance came out. And one day I was listening to The Brain, and I thought, man, some of those scales sound familiar. And I thought, oops, I guess Chick had already figured that out. And then I came upon Bela Bartók's Concerto for Orchestra. And in the third movement, we hear this next example. Oh, man. Okay, well, looks like Bella got there a long time before me. And it's all based on what I found out to be called the double augmented scale. So, even though I didn't invent it, it's a great sound that I've used countless times in my own compositions. And even though I didn't invent it because I thought I invented it and I really embraced it, it became something I really believed in that I could use in my music. Another example is what I call my 9-note scale. In 1998, I became Chief Conductor of the Danish Radio Big Band, and we were planning a recording of some of my compositions. It was ultimately released as Nice Work as a CD. I was writing an extended piece called Rough Night, and I wanted the middle section to be this kind of dreamy, very suspended time kind of situation. And I started playing around with the idea of taking a 3-note motive, like we have here in example 8, F, G flat, A flat, and then repeating it a major third higher and yet another major third higher into this scale that we have below. And we ended up with this 9-note scale with all kinds of great augmented diatonic structures. See in the next example. Right, and that leads us to a lot of diatonic structures that you can extract from the scale that sound like this. Yeah. Bob Brookmeyer used to talk about writing music to make people's teeth hurt. And I found that a lot of these things really necessitated a trip to the dentist because it really, it's got a lot of great chromatic tension in there. So anyway, I wrote this piece and I brought the piece to our first rehearsal in Copenhagen. And the band's pianist, Nikolai Benson, he was the son of Niels Viggo Benson, who's a highly regarded Danish classical composer. So we take a break, and Nikolai comes up to me and says, "Oh, you used a Messiaen scale there." I said, "Huh?" I thought, come on, I invented this thing. Well, turns out that my scale was the third of Olivier Messiaen's modes of limited transposition, which we see in example 10 down here. So, actually, Messiaen's scale began with a major second, so my scale is a mode of his scale. This is all laid out in great detail in his fantastic book called The Technique of My Musical Language. But I hadn't seen that book at that time, and so I thought I invented it, but Olivier got to it first. And that's a wonderful sound that, again, I've used many, many times. Just the idea of taking an octave and dividing it up certain ways, it's a great airplane exercise I've found to while away the hours flying over to Europe. So I've used this sound a lot over the years. So it finally ended up as part of this piece, Rough Night, and we can play a little example of it. You can hear it when the tempo slows down and it gets into this dreamlike kind of atmosphere with the piano playing the Messiaen scale. And there you go. So it really drove home the point, the old adage, there's nothing really new under the sun. As a jazz pianist, I discovered this many, many years ago. I'd come up with something that I thought was really hip, and then you'd hear it on an Earl Hines record from 1928. Earl Hines, amazing. And so there is nothing new under the sun most of the time. And the important thing is that I was exploring and I was trying out ideas and not afraid to have these what if situations. What if I took this augmented triad and raised it a half step to create a new scale? Okay, somebody else got there before I did, but the important thing was that I got there and I really believed in the sound and really embraced it and used it as part of my musical vocabulary. And frankly, the fact that Bartók and Messiaen figured out these kind of scales, and I did too, well, that puts me in pretty good company. So I'm rather happy about that. But, don't be afraid to just explore, come up with things on your own. Whether somebody else got there before you did or not, don't worry about it. Come up with your own stuff, and it can be very rewarding.
Thanks for watching today's mini lesson. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Drop any questions, comments, or suggestions for future videos down below. To watch our full-length events and participate in live Q&As with our presenting artists, head to jazzcomposerspresent.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.